ECOWAS delegation resumes talks in Mali as military junta wants 3 years rule. Stakeholders brainstorm on effective management of disaster in Nigeria. Plus, Nigeria's broadcast stations get pat on the back for good job on COVID-19 pandemic coverage. ECOWAS delegation talks are set to resume in Bamako after 2 days of negotiations with the junta. Nigeria ex-president Goodluck Jonathan, who is the head of the delegation, told reporters that a number of grounds have been covered but have not reached agreement on all the issues. The soldiers have agreed to free the ousted president Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, detained, along with other political leaders since the coup on Tuesday, and he would be able to return to his home in the capital, Bamako, and be able to travel abroad for medical treatment. The junta wants the military to rule for 3 years and also oversee a transitional process for the return of civilian rule. The junta wants a military-led transitional body to rule for 3 years, and the transition will be directed by a body led by a soldier who will also be head of state. Under the proposal, the government will also be predominantly composed of soldiers. Prime Minister Bubu Sise, who has been held with the ousted president at a military base outside the capital where the coup began, would also be moved to secure residence in the city. And more news from the global scene. Israel and the United Arab Emirates have agreed to normalize diplomatic ties and forge a broad new relationship on the US-sponsored deal. Now, this makes the United Arab Emirates the third Arab country to have formal diplomatic ties with Israel after Egypt and Jordan. The two countries will each appoint representatives and set up business delegations, as well as work to create a student exchange program once the coronavirus pandemic conditions allow. Several small-scale medical and defense collaborations were announced in the weeks preceding the normalization agreement. And from Côte d'Ivoire comes a report that President Alassane Ouattara on Monday submitted his application to run for a third term after weekend protests by opponents who say the constitution forbids him to contest the October election. 5 people have been killed and more than 100 wounded in clashes between protesters and police since Ouattara, who has been in office since 2011, announced his re-election bid earlier this month. And we hear reports saying twin blast, including a suicide bombing, killed at least 15 people and wounded 75 others on a restive southern Philippine island on Monday. Among them were security forces and civilians. The military said the first blast happened around noon on Monday when a homemade bomb in a motorcycle was triggered close to 2 parked army trucks, killing soldiers and civilians. And back home for us, rehabilitation work at the Federal Ministry of Information building, popularly known as Radio House, has continued despite the slowdown it experienced on account of the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's now hear from Anthony Forson.
Stands tall as the tallest building in Garki area of the Federal Capital City. It houses the Federal Ministry of Information and the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria. Since it was opened for occupation and use, the last time it experienced any major rehabilitation dates back 33 years. With the present administration's resolve in infrastructure development, rehabilitating ailing ones is therefore not out of place. It is in line with this that the Information and Culture Minister, Lai Mohammed, accompanied by the Permanent Secretary to the Ministry and other top management staff, visited Radio House to assess the level of work done so far. Given the loss of time the rehabilitation work has suffered on account of the COVID-19 pandemic. The scope of work to be done will include rehabilitation of the entire edifice, elevators, sanitary and water system, as well as electrical networks from the high tension.
From what I've seen from the model, in a few weeks' time, we're going to have a brand new radio house. The visit today has been quite useful because it has given us the opportunity to also make some further directions and also see how fast this whole project can move.
To this end, the minister, while expressing satisfaction with the assurances from the contractor that more men will be put on the job to speed up the 449 million naira work, assured of constant maintenance.
We can assure you will not happen that we will not wait for another 33 years before we overhaul the edifice. Of course, I hope that regular maintenance, which ought to be a management concern and priority, will be taken seriously by the management of the radio house.
Lai Mohammed promised to return to Radio House in 3 weeks' time for another round of inspection. Upon completion, this is the new Radio House that will be presented. In Abuja, Anthony Forson, NTA News.
Well, Nigeria's broadcasting stations are playing a critical role in the effective dissemination and information of COVID-19. However, the increased technological possibilities can be used with high premium for national interest. Well, this was the major takeaway at the 6th annual lecture of the National Broadcasting Commission. Let's now hear from Hamman Jabani.
With the theme Broadcasting Reforms and Coverage of Crisis, Disasters and Emergencies, the 6th annual lecture of the National Broadcasting Commission highlights the role of the broadcast media under COVID-19 and the realities of its coverages. The lecture, which centered on 3 major points that include classification, broadcast reforms in Nigeria, and the role of broadcasting in crisis communication, sees effective communication at the center of managing crisis or disaster through prompt and accurate reportage.
This multimedia approach has helped in underscoring the role of broadcasting in crisis management and national development, and position the broadcast media as an indispensable tool in every development plan.
The media's role continues to be very important in society. Of course, the media faces a lot of challenges, but that in all things there's national interest, and there's a need for the media to professionalize, in which case they have to imbue their ethics, and there has to be a degree of responsiveness, to national interest.
Things can be done with mutual respect and understanding, and dialogue is key. Nation building involves continuing interfacing and continuous dialogue, and we should continue along those lines.
Speakers commended the media in playing a strategic role in educating Nigerians on the pandemic and its effect and entrenching true democracy. However, they call for better welfare and training for broadcasters, provision of modern equipment, among others, to deliver effectively.
Nigeria is an open book, and it should not be. We have our values, and they are being diminished as a result of trans-border data flows. I studied the economics of broadcasting. There's money to be made here. We just need to look a little more and provide those values, integrity, and the promotion of our culture that is positive.
The Commission can lead in this direction because we are talking about broadcast. Unfortunately, that capacity is not there. The Commission needs to build capacity to do evidence regulation.
Key players say with the advent of social media and all forms of information and communication technologies, ICT, the media have become even more powerful, introduce instant feedbacks, thus making media convergence apt. Hamman Jabani, NTA News.
Let's look at other issues. With frequent cases of killings of Nigerians residing in northern Cyprus, the federal government has blacklisted universities in that country as she moves to investigate the death of Ibrahim Khalil, a 25-year-old student of civil engineering who died mysteriously in the country. Ikechukwu Ndukwe reports.
My son discovered something and maybe he protested.
Pains and remorse filled the arena as mother of alleged slain student Justice Amina Bello narrates the ordeal her late son Ibrahim Khalil passed, believing that such will not repeat itself.
My son had sent his elder brother a message telling him that he said, I will tell mother to stop paying this school fees. I've realized everything about this place is a scam. My son discovered something and maybe he protested. More so with that document, I saw that they could transfer money into some other people's account. Maybe the children will be threatened and so on. Looking that he wasn't the one that gave the instruction, but he wrote his name and signed on top.
Ibrahim Khalil was said to have jumped down from an upstairs. A story the mother says evidence in her disposal proves otherwise. This is not the first time authorities in northern Cyprus, a region whose independence is recognized only by Turkey, is coming up with doubtable stories of how Nigerians die in their high institutions of learning, Nigerian government says.
He said it's not only Ibrahim. I can go through names. I have some names here. Augustine Ngok, Gabriel Soriwe, Olashubomi Okwe. These are just a few of the ones that we... The death of Ibrahim Khalil should be the tipping point to a stop in the killing of our children anywhere in the world, particularly in northern Cyprus.
The Nigerian government is no longer ready to receive the news of unfortunate losses of lives of our citizens in that country, with the first stroke being the blacklisting of universities in that nation, advising students to register with the Nigerian Commission to safeguard over 8,000 undergraduates and other Nigerians in that country. In Abuja, Ikechukundukwe, NTA News.
A look at other issues. The federal government says managing disasters at all levels must move away from the traditional way of handling to a more effective and efficient service delivery, especially in the midst of COVID-19. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Umar Farouk, stated this at a retreat for heads of territorial, zonal and operations office of NEMA, which has as its theme effective and efficient service delivery at operational level. Ilyasu Ali Yakubu tells us more.
With the 2020 flood predictions by Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, which identified 102 local government areas in 28 states will experience high risks of flooding, while 275 local government areas in 36 states, including the FCT, to experience moderate risks of flooding, as well as 389 local government areas to have low risks of the disaster. Hence, the proactive interventions and strategic partnerships with states, local and international donor agencies. This retreat for zonal coordinators and operational officers is geared towards building capacities to mitigate the likely effects of flood. Participants speak on their expectation.
The new DG wants to walk the talk so that we can provide service delivery timely and effectively.
End of this workshop, we expect that we'll go back to our various offices, having known new things to manage disasters at the strategic level.
The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development emphasized the need for teamwork to evolve effective and efficient service delivery to mitigate the effects of flood disasters across the country.
We cannot therefore continue to manage disasters by waiting to respond to them. We must evolve strategies for prevention, preparedness, mitigation and response.
The essence of this retreat is to ensure that we rub minds to improve service delivery at the operational level.
It will be recalled that NEMA had inaugurated National Emergency Response Team deployed to flood-prone areas for prompt evacuation and response. In Abuja, Ilyasu Ali Yakubu, NTA News.
Let's take a break. We're back shortly. Stay tuned.
Love is such a beautiful thing. But what happens when love hits the rocks?
Please leave me alone.
When things turn sour.
Tell me the truth.
But this was for you, babe.
Really? Yes.
And you fear the damage cannot be fixed.
But I don't want to lose my wife.
No, keep it there.
When relationships are in desperate need to be mended, that's where we come in.
Thanks for staying tuned. Nigeria's real gross domestic product has contracted by -6.10% in the second quarter of the year. Now, the figures released by National Bureau of Statistics this Monday indicates that the oil GDP contracted by -6.63%, while the non-oil GDP contracted by -6.05%. However, reports shows that the aggregate real GDP grew by 1.58%. And in a related development, the Buhari Media Organization has described the slim decline in Nigeria's gross domestic product for the second quarter 2020 as proof that the country's economy is becoming more structurally resilient. The group said in a statement that the -6.10% contraction in the GDP for the second quarter of the year is a positive development at a time the global average is about 15%. It noted that it was the outcome of a lengthy nationwide lockdown that even adversely affected the most resilient of economies. BMO added that Nigeria's figure is not bad for a country that faced double jeopardy of a massive drop in oil price and production at the height of the global COVID-19 pandemic. This, it said, was because of the good work the country's economic managers did under the direction of President Muhammadu Buhari to begin to win the country from its over-reliance on oil before and at the onset of the global crisis. BMO is convinced that the country's GDP figure would be better in the third quarter of the year, with the resumption of economic activities as well as the injection of a 3.5 trillion naira stimulus package through the CBN to boost the non-oil sector. And joining us in the studio now is an economist, Dr. Tefa Abraham, to look at the implications of the latest MBS GDP figures. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Abraham.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
All right. Would you say you're surprised at the second quarter's GDP negative outlook?
This second quarter GDP growth, yes, it's negative, but it is expected because that's the overall effect of COVID-19 on the entire global economy. So for the Nigerian economy, that figure that was attained, that -6%, even showed that the economy really was really resilient in terms of being able to absorb the shock that was meted on the economy as a result of the lockdown. There was global supply shocks. Global demand was also affected, but the Nigerian economy was still able to withstand all the pressure that in terms of the goods and services needed to keep the economy going during the lockdown. All the food items given as palliatives, everything was sourced from within. So that even made the economy to be able to sustain itself. Otherwise, the negative growth would have even been worse than what we have.
Okay, and we know the agri sector is consolidating on its steady growth. We saw the second quarter's performance of 1.58%.
Mm-hmm.
What hopes can Nigerians derive from this?
The agricultural sector remains one of the drivers of the non-oil sector. If you look at the component of the growth, oil sector fell more than non-oil sector. The real GDP declined by -6.1% thereabout. Oil sector declined more than that. Non-oil sector, the decrease in non-oil sector was not as compared to that of the non-oil. So you see the current administration's effort to ensure that our non-oil sector becomes more vibrant is already yielding results. And that's why, in terms of components, agricultural sector was amongst the sectors that drove the growth that we have for the 2020 and second quarter, while other sectors like aviation, transport, manufacturing were negative. Agriculture remained positive.
Okay, let's do a projection now. Are you confident that the third quarter GDP figures can improve from economic indices available?
Certainly, yes, the third quarter GDP figure will improve because already there are already signals towards reopening the economy. Schools are already also picking up. School fees will be paid. You know, the aviation sector is already opening as well. But what we need to do going further in the third quarter is the way agricultural sector grew in the second quarter, but manufacturing did not, implies that there's still a weak link between agricultural sector and manufacturing. So whatever farmers are doing, we need to strengthen the agri-manufacturing link in terms of agro-allied industries.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tefo Abraham. You just nailed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right, let's turn our attention to COVID-19. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 says entry protocols have been put in place ahead of resumption of international flights to prevent importation of coronavirus into the country. PTF Chairman and Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, also wished the Lagos State Commissioner for Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, a speedy recovery from COVID-19 infection.
And I want to urge Nigerians to take a cue so that as we share these stories, we would help eliminate disbelief and skepticism with regards to whether COVID-19 is real and is here with us or it's a hoax. Let's keep arming the unbreakable Nigerian spirit to win this war and drive the virus or tame it out of our land. Join the hashtag Mask on Niger National Awareness Campaign.
For Health, Olorunimbe Mamora hinted that despite COVID-19 pandemic, routine health services, especially immunization, will be strengthened to boost immunity of infants.
In our determination to defeat the COVID-19 scourge, we cannot overemphasize the importance of adhering to the non-pharmaceutical interventions to curb the virus. As we continue to learn from experience gathered from managing COVID-19, the need to improve quality of care, health system strengthening, and seamless patient evacuation, especially in emergency situations, has become crucial. We shall therefore continue to review and strive for improvement in the treatment of COVID-19.
We have prioritized the need for healthcare workers and the health facilities. And this is to ensure that all necessary personal protective equipment and medical consumables are readily available as they continue to manage COVID-19 cases across the country.
And on the global scene, some 172 countries are engaging with WHO-led COVAX plan designed to ensure equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines as plasma treatment receives green light by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Uche Ugochukwu brings us details now.
The coronavirus pandemic continues to surge around the world as the Worldometer COVID-19 data puts the global tally at 23,647,945 at 6 p.m. Nigerian time. 813,688 lost their lives to the disease. And in search for cure, the World Health Organization says some 172 countries are engaging with the WHO-led COVAX plan designed to ensure equitable access to COVID-19 vaccine. Meanwhile, Indonesia has secured a supply of up to 60 million doses of potential COVID-19 vaccine from China and the United Arab Emirates. President Joko Widodo told a cabinet meeting that the supply is part of the 290 million vaccines vaccines that will be made available for Indonesia in 2021. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, has given emergency authorization to use plasma to treat coronavirus patients. The technique uses antibody-rich blood plasma from people who have recovered from the disease. Reports from Europe say many countries in the continent are facing a sharp increase in cases. France, Germany, Spain, Italy, and the Czech Republic recorded major daily increases over the weekend. Back home, death toll clocks 1,002, with the new 5 fatalities reported by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. The country now has 52,227 confirmed cases, out of which 38,945 have recovered. That and the cases from other African continents puts the continent's total positive figure at 1,193,588 as recorded by the Africa Center for Disease Control. That's Monday's updates on the global coronavirus pandemic. I am Uche Ugochukwu.
Thanks, Uche. Let's look at politics. The Governor, May Malabuni, led caretaker an extraordinary National Convention Planning Committee of the All Progressives Congress has recorded another milestone in the achievement of the mandate given to the committee to reconcile members and reposition the party. On this note, Chairman of the Caretaker Committee, May Malabuni, met with the Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, and Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timipre Silva, at the party's National Secretariat. Deputy National Publicity Secretary of APC, Yakini Nabena, in a statement said the meeting held behind closed doors charged the ministers to work together and lead the party's efforts to reconcile aggrieved members and reposition the party, particularly in the South region. Ahead of the governorship elections in Niger Delta states, that is Edo and Ondo, as well as legislative by-elections in Bayelsa and Cross River states, Governor May Malabuni charged the ministers to play lead roles in bringing together party members and stakeholders to ensure that the party emerges victorious. President Muhammadu Buhari commiserates with the Kwara State Governor Abdurrahman Abdulrazak and the Tijaniya movement in Nigeria on the demise of the Grand Khalifa of the Tijaniya Kwara State, Sheikh Abdurrahman Yusuf Meyaki. A presidency statement says the president also condoles with the Emir of Ilorin, Alhaji Ibrahim Sulu Gambari, the Ilorin Emirate, the Meyaki family of Ilorin, and the entire Muslim Ummah on the passage of the frontline teacher of Islamic education. As a preacher of note, President Buhari affirms that the late Sheikh was an embodiment of peace and will be sorely missed for his tranquil disposition and representation in all matters. We're done with the news. Thank you very much for your time. I'm Ruth Aguela. We have this message for you before we go.